Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. This is going to be a really interesting conversation with Julie Kline, Director of Program Strategy at Lifetime Arts. Hey, welcome, my new friend.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Julia.
Well, we're going to be talking about connecting to healthy aging, which I'm like, what? That's down the road for me. And then I look at myself in the camera and I'm like, wait a minute. I let my hair go white during the pandemic and I'm like in my 60s and this isn't like my mom and my grandmother's era. This is like me, I'm thinking. So I'm shocked, but I think we better have this conversation.
We're all in the aging club, right? We're all aging if we're lucky, Julia. So congratulations.
Oh my God, I love. Okay, now I feel better, Julie. Now I feel better. You are right. We are lucky. Well, we are super lucky to have our amazing presenting sponsors. And they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, our new shows just dedicated to those fundraising warriors. They're on every Friday. Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us. Now we have done over 1,200 episodes. And so without our amazing partners, most of these folks have been with us since day one when we started 5 years ago. It's pretty powerful. So we're really excited to be able to give them our gratitude. Hey, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. We have this really super cool and diverse group of co-hosts that come from all over the country. And I get to fly solo today with Julie, but I hope you've been able to get to know them and meet them along with us on the Nonprofit Show. Okay, Julie Kline, Director of Program Strategy, Lifetime Arts, lifetimearts.org. Okay, two really interesting words, lifetime and arts.
Yes.
Show us how this works.
Well, just to speak a little bit about Lifetime Arts, we are a national organization, and we're really working to weave creative aging into the fabric of our communities. And we'll talk more in a little bit about what I mean when I say creative aging. But basically, the idea is that all of us are creative and should be able to have opportunities to be creative across the entire span of our lives. And of course, our lives are getting longer, right? So we can talk a little bit about that, about the demographics in a second. But basically, Lifetime Arts sort of works in a few different ways. We like to say from the bottom up and the top down. So sort of in a grassroots way, we really mobilize communities to lift up creative aging possibilities to impact older adults' lives. So we work with organizations, individuals, teaching artists sort of on the ground, training them, coaching them through program implementation. But then we're also working on the larger scale, really trying to integrate creative aging into the policies and practices that support older adults' healthy living. So we're working on a sort of many different levels.
Yeah. Your website's fabulous. I mentioned that to you in the green room. And it got me thinking, Julie, that so often I hear, and maybe this is just like my demographic and my generation of people saying, oh, well, when I retire, I'll be able to be creative. I'll be able to take that art class or explore that hobby more fully or whatever. And I find it really fascinating to kind of pull back the reins and say, no, don't wait until there's like a new phase in your life.
Sure.
You can pursue this. And so I kind of saw that in myself, actually. I was like, oh yeah, wait, we need to be thinking about this in a different way. And so that kind of brings me to like my starting question. What is the current state of healthy aging in America? And what does that look like so that maybe we have a foundational level set to have our conversation today?
For sure. I'd love to just start with the statistics, and they're out there and they're known, right? But I think it's a good reminder, this sort of context that we're living in this moment that we're living in, especially in America, right? So we are aging, and that's due to a lot of great things, right? Folks are living longer, healthier lives, generally speaking. By 2030, actually 1 in every 5 Americans is going to be 65 and up, which is pretty incredible to think about. And in 2034, older adults 65 and up are actually going to outnumber, kids 18 and under for the first time in US history. So we are all aging, right? And the country is aging. Of course, we're not aging equally, right? Our longevity, how long we live, how well we live is affected by lots of factors, race, location, geography, even our code, like specifically, changes our outcomes. And also, I always say, the silver tsunami image,
Yeah.
by its nature, very ageist, right? And it's looking at these demographic changes as more of a drain on society than, an opportunity. I will say, I think it's more accurate to say there's an isolation tsunami, right? Loneliness, social isolation is already a public health issue. The Surgeon General recently released a report on that. And social isolation is going to affect older adults more. I think it's 1 in every 4 older adults is socially isolated, and in a way that actually takes years off of their life. They say that being socially isolated is basically equivalent to smoking. So these are public health concerns, that we all should be thinking about. And ultimately, we're all aging, as I said before. So we should all be thinking about, how do we want to live these longer lives, and how can society really be adjusted to make way for it? But again, we feel like at Lifetime Arts, this is an opportunity and not a problem. And that nonprofits, I know as your audience, this is a moment to seize. This is an audience that very often people aren't always thinking about. Right. And truly in this moment, we all should be part of aging services, right? The idea that aging services is some siloed thing just doesn't really make sense with these changing demographics.
Right.
And I'll just say too, I think that when we talk about healthy aging, physical health, mental health, yes, it's also beyond that, right? It's about the health of the whole person. It's about well-being, and it's about feeling that we can continue to contribute, through the whole expanse of our lives.
It's so fascinating, because one of the things that I don't know why I never thought of this, Julie, but the light bulb went off was when I was on your website and I was researching you and your work. If before I would have been like, oh, well, that goes, healthy aging goes over into this programmatic area. Yeah. This isn't going to relate to, 99% of the nonprofits that are out there. I mean, 1.8 million nonprofits in America. How many folks are actually dealing with, our aging population? But what I learned from your work was that, no, you're saying no matter where you are, this should be a part of your programming or your consideration. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And I don't know about you, but I kind of was like, how is this intersecting? And why don't we think about this?
Yes. A huge thing that we talk about all the time in Lifetime Arts is the idea of being multi-sector, right? The idea that every sector, I mean, if you think about what nonprofits are, supposed to do, which is serve people in the community, well, right. Older adults are increasingly part of that, more and more a part or a section or a, component of that community. Why aren't we, putting them central, or at least including them at all when we're thinking about serving the community? And the truth is, this work really needs partnerships, right? Every part. So when I say multi-sector, we at Lifetime Arts work with library systems. We work with arts organizations. We work with community organizations. We work with senior centers. We work with veterans homes, Parks and Rec. Anybody, any organization that's serving the community can be involved in supporting older adult programming, and creative aging is a really perfect program to serve older adults in the community. And again, that idea of their whole health.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing to look at. I mean, one of the, we're on the nonprofit show in January, we always spend a lot of our editorial content or focus on prognostications, right? Mm-hmm. For 2025, what's going to be coming forward. And everybody's chasing the youth market, and the discussion in fundraising is, okay, this aging population, this huge transference of wealth, we have this demographic shrinking, getting, passing away, and we need to be going after the youth market and looking at all this. And so I've got to say, Julie, I don't find that a lot of nonprofits are reaching out and actually even having this thought leadership discussion, mm-hmm. right?
Julia, what we say is like, we are all aging. We are also all ageist. There's really not a way to escape it. Our society is ageist. That's the messages, right? So we have to kind of, we, especially in our trainings and our workshops, start from ourselves. And we need to first think about what's our own view of aging? Why do we have that view? You know, we might have some positive examples of aging too, and that's great. Most likely, you know, we're swimming in a media environment that is fairly negative about aging, that the focus is on youth. And I think it's such a shame because, again, since we're going to possibly have these 100-year lives. So what are we saying about that last quarter or last, you know, third of our life, that we're just going to disappear? Like, we're not, that we don't have the capacity for growth, that we don't want to keep learning, that, you know, so I think there's like this internal process that people and nonprofits, and myself included, have to continually go through, as at the same time as there's also just the truth that the world is changing, you know, and we need to change with it. And that, you know, our society is aging, you know, how are we going to address this? Not only as the supports that folks might need, but really just their opportunities for further life and learning.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by that, because I love that you said we need to look internally first and kind of reorient, or not even reorient, maybe just acknowledge what we think about and how we see this. It seems to me that if we did this, we'd have a lot more nonprofits saying, holy moly, yeah, I need to adopt this mindset or explore these opportunities for programming, versus giving it to the nonprofit down the street because they deal with, you know, seniors.
Yes. I want to add too about that internal work too, is, you know, Dr. Becca Levy's work has been really incredible in this field, around the way we think about aging actually affects how well, quote unquote, we age, or even how long our life is. I think it's 7.5 years of life can be added just by thinking positively about the way that we age. So it just, to me, like there's actually like an urgency to our adjusting our own viewpoint about this. And yes, I agree with you. Silos are, of course, the enemy, right? To say, well, you know, I'm a nonprofit serving over here, but that senior serving organization is going to, you know, support the seniors. It's like, again, we're all in this club. You know, how can we be contributing towards all of our quality of life as we're aging?
Yeah. That for me, Julie, was like the light bulb that went off when I was on your site. I was kind of dumbfounded, frankly, that I hadn't thought of that. That even that I'm in this environment day in, day out, talking with nonprofits, not just on the nonprofit show, but across in my workaday world. And I really found myself saying, yeah, I'm part of this problem. I have assigned this to somebody else, and not, you know, not within my own work. And so I was riveted, because I thought, holy moly, if I'm doing that, what does that look like across the sector, right? And so I want to go there and kind of talk about this, because I don't think, as we've been chatting here, I don't think nonprofits get this. If we are so siloed, how do we understand that we're part of this journey, or that we should at least explore the journey, right? How does that come about?
Yeah, I mean, we work with so many organizations across the country. I mean, I do want to speak just to your point of like, you didn't realize, you know, the capacities of this work until I think there is something about seeing this in action. And I'll just say personally, for me, you know, I was a theater artist. I was doing my thing. I wasn't necessarily thinking about this particular population or serving folks as they aged. And I was invited to join an intergenerational theater company. And it was actually the first time I saw older adults on stage telling their stories. And it totally changed my life. Basically, I was like, this is exactly what needs to occur. And here are, so typically the invisible members of our society, fully center stage invisible, right? So I had to see it to like believe it, and to understand the impact, and to see myself in those older adults, right? So I'll just say that I think we work with, you know, organizations and individuals across the country. We have trained over 10,000 individuals. We worked with about 500 organizations. You know, again, our focus is creativity and aging. And I'll just say, you know, the research behind the benefits of creativity for older adults is vast. We know that, engaging in creativity, especially over time, that folks, it's proven that folks go to the doctors less, they use less medication. They end up feeling more active in their lives overall. They make friends and they make stronger, community relationships, which in the end is like super key to one's health as they age. They have less falls. It's just crazy the benefits. So when we're talking to organizations, we, as I said, we want to all consider ourselves all part of aging services, and we find that folks, when they start to engage in and creating or implementing creative aging work, they see the benefits to participants. Those are somewhat obvious, or you see once you begin. What I think a lot of organizations don't realize is the benefits back to them, actually. That staff and administrators of creative aging programs find joy and delight. They learn so much about engaging with older adults. That is a constant learning process and intergenerational exchange. We have a lot of organizations that, just started one program, a collage program, an organization, Rum River Art Center in Minnesota, a collage program, a painting program. It snowballed. There was so much need, there was so much interest that creative aging is now central to the entire organization's mission. We work with a lot of pretty big, art museums across the country. They started to realize that in order to really implement programs, what they actually needed to do was ageism training. And not only for the folks running those programs, for the entire staff, for security guards, for guest services, for docents, because everybody is a part of creating a welcoming environment for older adults. And again, we're walking around with these internal biases that we don't necessarily know. And they really realized there was a greater culture shift that needed to happen. So at Lifetime Arts, we talk a lot about, yes, we're doing creative aging programs, but actually secretly, we're trying to change culture. We're really trying to shift just the ways that we view aging in this country.
It's fascinating that you would say that. I was just talking to my sister and we were laughing about our grandmother who, as she aged, she'd be like, oh, she's an old woman, or oh, he's an old man. And I'd be like, sister, he's like the same age, or, and it was fascinating to see this process and this journey. So I love what you said, that we all need to kind of get some training here and think about what our bias is, because what an amazing place to start. I almost feel like you must have that conversation before you can launch into programming.
Yes. Well, what you're talking about, Julia, is othering people, right? And this, even though they are reflective of you, right? So this actually comes up a lot. Folks don't want to go to a senior center or an older adult center because that's for old people. Even though they themselves might be 65 and up, and this is just super common, that's super common.
It's such a fascinating thing to hear you speak about this. And I would imagine any of our viewers and listeners can find points in their lives where they're like, oh yeah, that's right. I just never thought about it in terms of my work or my nonprofit, right? Just like, oh yeah, that's part of where we are, but what does that mean to us? This time has flown by, and I mentioned to you in the green room, it goes by fast.
Yes.
Because I have so many questions for you, and I'm just so interested in this. I was thinking, Julie, that before we got started, in 5 years of doing the nonprofit show daily, and working with having all different types of guests on, I think you're the very first that we've ever had on to talk about this intersection. And so shame on us for not investing in this or recognizing this. But I want to kind of talk about how maybe even if we're in a nonprofit and we think, well, this isn't us, like I mentioned, that's the nonprofit down the street. How should we think about engaging in this? And you have something called curriculum design coaching. What does that look like? And how does just a nonprofit who thinks maybe this isn't at all in their wheelhouse, how do they discover that it really is?
It's a great question, and I can speak more about like our specific, our coaching is taking people through, how to launch, implement, and sustain creative aging programs. And I'll say that I feel like one of the first steps, though, is really just doing that community mapping. I think it's kind of shocking to realize sometimes you don't know the senior center down the street. You don't know actually the AAA that's where you don't know that there's a memory care facility or there's. I think that invisibility of older adults can sometimes permeate so many hardworking people that are already trying to serve, the older adults in your community. So how as you as a nonprofit can first be like, what is out there? Also, just where are older adults going? Where are they gathering? Yes, folks go to a senior center, but also folks go to the library. Folks are going to classes, at a Parks and Rec. Folks, where are they gathering at houses of worship? What are older adults doing? Because I think the biggest thing that we do when we're coaching individuals and organizations is to stress that creative aging programming or any engagement for older adults has to be responsive, meaning it has to be based on what people want. Because older adults, possibly more than any other demographic, they will tell you what they want, or they'll vote with their feet and they will just walk out, or they won't come back to engagements or things that you're trying to set up for them. So folks want choice, right? They want to be able to choose what lines up with their interests. So I think the most important thing is first just to ask.
Yeah, I love that you use the word mapping. I think that's brilliant. And I would argue or add that we just don't do that enough. I mean, like if you're a food bank, you probably aren't doing that as well, right? I mean, this is just one of those awful things that the for-profit business gets. The for-profit sector, they understand the competitive marketplace and the competitive set. I do not know why we do not do this in the nonprofit sector. It's awful. It's really a foundational issue for me. And so I loved that you said that. I think it's really powerful. Do you ever see that there's a gender issue? I mean, we think about women outliving men. Does that ever navigate the creative content or creative programming?
It does come up. I think in a big way where it comes up is there is a tendency, and I'm going to make a big generalization because we know every older adult is different than every other older adult. But I think that sometimes creative programs or the way that maybe they're marketed don't always attract older men. I think sometimes there's, even when I've taught creative aging classes, we're sitting in a circle, we're maybe sharing some of our feelings. Some folks, some men of an older generation don't vibe with that, and so, but there are also so many art forms that do really attract older men, and we've had classes, we've supported classes where they were doing rawhide braiding, where they were doing wood carving, where they're doing digital photography. I don't want to go into stereotypes here, but there's art forms that engage, across the spectrum of gender. So something important to keep in mind. But I do think we need to be sensitive to sometimes the needs of older men. They need social engagement, just as much, but it might take some different forms.
Right. I was going to throw in there lapidary.
Yes.
Lapidary clubs in my community are huge.
Wow. Yes, that makes sense.
It's so funny. Do you, not to get too far into the weeds, but do you advocate programs that are gender, specific, or do you look for things that combine the two? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's another question about being responsive, right? So when we're working with organizations, they're deeply, embedded in community, and we work in rural spots and we work in urban spots and, everywhere in between. So it's really about who the organization wants to serve, and then forming a program or engagements that, address them. So I think I wouldn't say there's sort of, of course we want our classes to be open to everybody, but if you're working in a senior center and there are a majority of, men that are looking for engagement, then maybe you do a program that, pulls them in more. And a lot of, senior centers and other institutions, there's real, cultural differences and cultural specificity that's needed to really engage those folks there. So that's, again, what I'm saying about responsive. You might be surprised, but you need to first just ask those questions.
Yeah. Well, going back to your brilliant comment about, the foundational nature of mapping and understanding, what your client base wants and what they, not just what you think they need, but what they're
Yes.
telling you they need, right?
I think that's such a tendency with older adults too. And that's a little bit of ageism. Like, let's take care of you. And that's
Yeah.
just not, what do you
Yeah.
want is the better question. What are you looking for? What do you want to engage in? And what do you want to learn? Because you have a lot more life left, so how do you want to use it?
Right. Well, this has just been an absolutely riveting conversation. I feel like I could go on and on and on with you, but I want to get your information back up on the show because I think this is such an interesting thing for our nonprofit sector to look at. And you can learn more about Julie Kline, Director of Programming Strategy at Lifetime Arts, and just the overall concept and the training that they offer at lifetimearts.org. O-R-G. It's an absolutely untapped, I'm going to use the word concept, right, Julie? Like, this is something that I think a lot of organizations, if you open this discussion up at your next board meeting or C-suite or staff meeting, people would be like, I never thought about that. So this is not like a quick fix. It seems to me, right? This is going to be a journey that you have to take.
For sure. And I just wanted to mention that beyond just this website, we also have a huge compendium of resources at creativeagingresources.org, creativeagingresource.org, excuse me. And also we really find that just seeing the work in action is really helpful for folks. So like if you were to have a board meeting, a small, lovely video, would be lovely to show. And there's so many on E.A. Michelson Philanthropy's website. They have a specific website called Videos to Inspire. They recently had a short with Jane Fonda, actually, speaking exactly about creative aging and its power. So I think that, again, if you can't get in to see a class or see an exhibition of older adult work, of videos to just really just, give you the taste of what it is we're talking about.
Right. Well, to start the conversation, because it's such an interesting conversation. And wow, it could really change the trajectory of programming for a nonprofit as opposed to, passing the buck to somebody else. Just a fascinating discussion. Again, Julie Kline, Director of Program Strategy at Lifetime Arts. You got to go check them out, lifetimearts.org. And then help me out with the other resource that you mentioned, Julie.
Yep, it's the creativeagingresource.org.
Uh-huh.
And then E.A. Michelson Philanthropies, Videos to Inspire. I could get that, the exact web address to put up with this when we're done.
I love it. Just fabulous. Well, really an amazing conversation. You got to come back, later in the season for us and even share more information about what you're learning and how we can engage. Even though we think that this might not be in our programming wheelhouse, this has got to combine with so many missions out there. And if you don't think it is now, it will be. As you mentioned, Julie, we're all on this journey together, and some of us are closer to participating than others.
For sure. Let's make the world that we want to all age in. That's the way to think about it.
I love that. That's really profound. Absolutely. Hey, another thing that's profound is the support from our amazing sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that have helped us age. When we started this, I thought it was a 2-week gig, and now we're in 5 years plus. And so these have been the folks that have journeyed along with us in the Nonprofit Show. What a great conversation. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to speak with you.
Been a lot of fun. And, we end each show with this mantra. It means something different to me dang near every day I say it. And today it means something totally different. And so I'll share my mantra with you as I do at the end of each and every show. It simply goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.